It's been over 4 years since the first Far Cry graced computers with its gorgeous tropical setting and unfortunate mutant twist at the end. Since then, there have been a number of console spin-offs, but nothing could be called a proper sequel. Far Cry 2 changes this finally, and you can rest easy, there are no Trigens. Far Cry 2 is kind of an oddity because it is a sequel in name only. It does not continue the story of Jack Carver, there are no crazy feral powers, and the game no longer takes place on a tropical island. The gameplay entirely focuses on gunplay, and this stripped-down approach is actually refreshing. There are no gimmicks to worry about. This game is about placing you in a wide-open world where you can do what you want. Well, at least that's what the back of the box says. The reality is a little more complicated. On one hand, you have this truly massive open world set in an unnamed African country. You are placed in this sectarian struggle between two factions and tasked to kill a mysterious arms dealer named the Jackal. The story isn't all that thrilling, but it does get a little interesting later on, especially when you start making choices that affect how things play out by determining who lives and who dies. Just be aware it'll be a while before things really start to ramp up. To keep things varied, there are side missions that you can accept from your buddies that add to the overall experience. These friendly NPCs will grant you alternative ways to accomplish missions, and following their lead will upgrade your safe houses with healing items and ammo. The idea is you can build up a bond with your buddy by helping them or healing them when they're writhing on the ground in pain. It becomes an interesting choice whether or not you should risk your well-being to save them in hopes of rewards later, or if you should just let them rot. The artificial intelligence of the enemies is pretty good overall. They'll sometimes lose track of you if you hide, or blindly shoot if they know your general location. Other times they'll jump into jeeps and chase you mercilessly. All of this feels realistic and makes popping them in the head even more satisfying. There are problems, though. Sometimes an enemy will see his friend's head burst like a piñata next to him and not react in any way, or soldiers will just stand idle while being shot. These are not exactly new problems in the FPS genre or in open world games in general, but it sticks out a little more because the rest of the AI is generally solid. In terms of graphics, this game is quite pretty. The graphics aren't as good on the console, but it really shines on PC. The lighting effects, fire effects, weather effects, and terrain are all excellent. You don't need a supercomputer of Crysis proportions. We had good results on a few different rigs. The fire effects aren't just pretty, but can also be used tactically, as enemies will shy away from a blaze. One of the main issues I have is that the enemies aren't very varied. This makes sense given the open world nature of the game, but you don't get the feeling of progression that you would in a more linear game. Normally you'd shoot a grunt and then work your way up the food chain to armor-clad special ops guy or something like that, but there's none of that in this game. Hence, if you don't experiment with a lot of the guns, then fights can get pretty repetitive. That's not to say the game isn't immersive, because it definitely has immersive qualities. Used guns jam as weapons degrade, you have to fix yourself up by pulling bullets out of yourself, and enemies chatter to each other during combat. There are weird things though, like a magically updating objective map, but that doesn't really destroy the game's atmosphere. A more annoying issue is that since the world is so big, a lot of the time will be spent walking or driving around. You can fast travel in buses, but a lot of the time you have to hop into vehicles. And this won't be that big a deal to anyone who, say, played an MMO, but the vehicles just don't have that much of a feel to them, and it's easy to get hung up on rocks or delayed by guard posts that you frequently pass by. Multiplayer is the standard fare of deathmatch, team deathmatch, capture the flag, and there's a hybrid VIP territories mode, so you know what to expect. Although there really aren't any surprises for the PC and console versions, they do come with a very powerful and easy to use map editor. This is exactly the kind of thing that could lead to a very strong online community, so we're eager to see what people do with it. Far Cry 2 may have very little to do with Far Cry, but it's still an excellent game. It will take you somewhere around 25 hours for the single player, it's challenging, and it's fun. People were wondering if the Far Cry series would be completely overshadowed by Crysis, but that is definitely not the case here. You would be wise to take a stroll through the savannah, just watch out for the zebras.